Look, have mercy on me.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to this week's episode of On the Bluff. I'm your host, Christian Fowler. Joining me, as always, my co-host, Gabe Kuhn, and our producer making poopy pants faces over there, Kenny Stubblefield.
Poopy pants faces.
You ever just like look at the camera and go, I'm like sitting like this. Like I just need to just scoot over just a little bit.
Not used to being on camera.
Not used to being on camera. I'm not used to this.
You look good on camera, though. We talked about it last week. You look great.
He does. So the only positive of not being in studio is Kenny can be on camera with us the whole time. Me and Gabe have clamored for a Kenny cam for over a year now. Still hasn't happened. So when we're on
well,
here,
honestly, the real reason we want it, can we like be full disclosure here? When we're in studio, we always hear, because we have the feed to the producer's booth, we always hear like these little noises from Kenny. Like if he burps, you'll hear and then you'll hear like a
Christian does not cuss.
His lips will start smacking. We have
rarely does Christian cuss.
While we do the show, though, we have basically an ASMR episode going on in our ear. That's why we need a Kenny cam.
There was one time in the middle of a I think we took a break or something, and he was like, "If you don't effing stop chewing gum in my ear."
What episode was it where it wasn't just chewing gum, because we know the chewing gum, it was when he was eating. He was like snacking on something. And Kenny makes subtle noises when he smacks. Like
and very sweet. I have sweet subtle noises.
He'll give it
a we don't have to say exactly what this is, but a lot of times you'll cheer.
Yeah.
That happens often. It's either chewing gum.
I'm in the middle of talking about Naquan Tomlin, and I hear that.
Yeah,
but he's not gonna be able to do that.
Hitting that vape.
He's locked in right now.
I think he hit it. I think he hit it on the show last week.
I did. Listen,
he wasn't even thinking about it. He just
I wasn't even thinking about it. It's sitting right here. It's ready to go.
He's got the regular one. Kenny used to be a modded vape guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if you still have it laying around.
That's sitting right here.
There it is. Yes, man, that man is blowing clouds in there.
Yeah. That's where
blowing O's while we're doing the show.
Yeah. That's the real deep inhale.
And now that you just took a drink of that real quick, I am missing my Waterloo.
I know, man. There's some cold ones at the studio. We will be back at the studio next week. We'll be back, but we just needed to take another week of no studio inside the StreamYard. Which, listen, man, it looks good. I mean, I think it looks dope. Looks fun. Yeah. It's not the studio, but it looks great.
Yeah, snow and everything's starting to melt though. Y'all haven't had any issues, have you?
Nope.
Good.
Zero. Just
ready to get my damn kids back in school.
Yeah. Has it been bad? Has it been too much time with the old kiddos?
Man, I know I love my kids. They're awesome, but man,
put too much time with them.
Yeah, I mean, they just get bored, and it's like, I got a bunch of diva kids, man. They don't want to go play in the snow. It's too cold.
You got to entertain them.
My son's like, I'll be red. I'm like, it's because you're a white boy getting out in cold weather. Yeah, that's what's going to happen.
Yeah. It's a whole idea. It's a whole idea.
Thing. It's what happens, man.
But it's almost behind us, Kitty. They'll be back in school before you know it.
Tomorrow. We got the word. They're back in school. Well, today. So if you're watching this on Tuesday, they will have been back in school. So
okay.
I'm excited.
Good to hear.
All right, fellas, without further ado, let's not even waste time this week. Let's get into it because, Gabe, you and I have been talking about this for a month. Memphis was playing with fire. Memphis basketball playing very well, but a lot of close games, received some scrutiny, seemed to have made up for it when we talked last week with a convincing win over Wichita State, their biggest win of the year. And what do on the other side of that but lose 2 straight close games to South Florida and then to Tulane? And these are 2 games that Memphis had a lead in, and it felt like they were in control of, and ultimately they just didn't pull it out in the end. They didn't play well down the stretch, and they got beat in both of these games somehow. And I'm sure we'll talk about this a little bit. They're still in the top 25. They're number 19 right now. But there's no way you can feel good about this at all. And this is what this is what we've been talking about. We've been saying look, we're not being negative. There's nothing but overwhelmingly positive about this team. But we know the game. We know sports. We see it all the time. And you can't play with fire over and over again without bad things happening. And one loss would have been one thing, but back-to-back is tough. And so here we sit, Memphis back-to-back losses. How do you feel, Gabe Kuhn?
Concern, concern level 1 to 10. I'm probably at like a 7.5 or an 8 about them sort of rebounding. We just saw this coming though. Like I figured that they'd lose one game coming up, not 2 straight though, a quad 3 and a quad 2, one of them being a quad 3 at home against a bad South Florida team. Like that was just brutal to watch. They had a 20-point lead. There's a stat out there, I think, about like losing 20-point leads as a top AP top 10 team. They're like one of the very few, if not the only, that has done that at home. But I mean, largely the reason my concern meter is so high is because of what Penny Hardaway's been saying, right? Like the losses, I figured in the preseason Tulane was going to be one I circled on the road. Didn't think South Florida, right? But if you just sort of put the losses in a vacuum, they're still 15-4. Like they still have a lot out in front of them, and they can right the ship. But when you hear what Penny's talking about, it becomes a lot more concerning because he's talking about chemistry. He's talking about like he is the only coach I have ever heard. I've listened to a lot of pressers, like truly a lot of pressers. I know Kenny has because he has to go in and record all these pressers. He is the only coach I've ever heard in any sport. I think I'm pretty confident saying that has said, I have to avoid playing certain guys on the floor because they have personality clashes. That's paraphrasing, but that's what he said. That's the only time I've heard any coach say that. So like, there's just, I can get by with the losses. They could start winning here soon, get back to their winning ways. We've seen it. We've seen what this team can do. But what Penny's saying, I think, has staying power, and that is scary.
Yeah, I completely agree with that because, like you said, a couple losses with the talent of this team, especially with UAB and Rice coming up, you feel pretty good about rebounding in those games and getting back to winning ways. Then Wichita State, a team that you just got your biggest win of the season against, and then Temple. So it's like the next 4 don't seem overly concerning, but it's what Penny's saying. It's what's happening in the locker room that becomes more concerning because we've seen Penny talk about it in the past, not being able to play certain players because of the attitude that they have and the way that they're acting and egos. And here we go again. And I think this probably happens all over the country and in a lot of sports.
It happens every year here, though. At some point, there's always that day of reckoning.
Right. It's a constant here. It's a constant at the University of Memphis, and it becomes concerning, especially when you have a team that is so good. Like this team is so good and so talented, and there's so much in front of them. They've been so successful this year. But then this is worrying. This is worrying. And that's not the only thing that he said that concerned me or that kind of took me off guard a little bit. He also said, like, we're a last 4-in type team. That's what we are. That's what we have been. And I don't really know how he meant that. I don't know if he meant it as, we're used to being in this position and, back up against the wall and we can play like that. Or if he meant this is just who we are. We're just a last 4-in type team. We're not a top 5-6 seed line type of team. I don't think he would say that, but that's at least what it sounded like. It did not sound good at all. And I don't even like referencing the past with this team at all because it's a completely different team. You can't reference being a last 4-in team, even if it is, we've been in this position before, our backs up against the wall. This team has not been in that position. This is not the same team from last year. This is not the same team from 2 years ago. This is a completely different team. They're not on paper a last 4 type team. No. They haven't played like a last 4 type team for 98% of this season. That's not who they are. They should be a top 5 or 6 seed if they play up to capability. But now you look around, you got 4 losses. You still got 2 games against FAU. You still got another game against Tulane. You still got another game against Wichita State, which, as I mentioned, I know they blew them out, but Wichita State has not been bad this year. They've been pretty formidable for the most part. And you start looking around and you say, well, we felt pretty confident about Memphis being a high-seeded team come NCAA tournament time. And that's quickly dissipating. Like that's quickly going back to 8-9 seed is where they're heading because they can't do this. Because you can't look around and say, oh, they're going to win these games. They're going to make up for this.
Right.
When they're losing games to South Florida and when they're losing games to Tulane, who's not a bad team, but these are 2 games on paper they should have won. As you mentioned, they were up big, 20 points against South Florida, blew that, lost by 1. It's just they're not in a good place right now. And I think you summed it up perfectly saying you look overarching view at all the numbers and stats and record and all this, and it looks good, but you take the deep dive on Penny's comments, you take the deep dive on what's happened in the last 2 games, you just optically watch what's happened in the last 2 games, and it is a little bit concerning right now.
Now with his last 4 in whatever he said, his comment, I'm hoping he's talking about historical significance since he took the job. That's what I'm hoping he's talking about. You can read it however you want to read it, though. And I think that it's not how he should be terming this particular season or he shouldn't talk about that this year because you have a tremendously talented roster. Do I think they miss a guy like Caleb Mills? 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But this entire year, once he put together the transfer portal class and brought together all these different guys that were 1s or 2s at their particular place, when he put this together, the expectation was to get out of the 8-9 game. It was always that. Like, there was nothing less than that. It was going to be a 7-6, 5-4, 3 seed. That's what everybody wanted. That's what this collection of talent led everyone to believe, and especially how they played in the out of conference. So I think even if he's talking about historical significance with that quote that you brought up, it still does not hit the same. That's not how we should be talking about this particular team. Now, as far as on the court and some things that just really piss you off and bother you about what you've seen from this team these last 2 games, 2 things that just seem so easy, innate, something that out of a timeout or when you have some time, you should be able to draw up and understand. 2 things this team struggles with incredibly bad. 1, out of bounds defense. Holy mother of God. Zion James, who killed you from the 3-point line and killed you all day, he gets a wide open corner 3 with 2 minutes to go and you're up by 1.
That wasn't a Penny thing. That was a David Jones thing.
Regardless, in the end of the day, no matter what Penny does to deflect blame, it always comes back to the head coach.
Right.
Like, it always is going to come back to that. You can say I have the best game plan ever, but if your guys aren't executing the game plan, what does that say about you and the way you are pushing it to them? You have to get across to them. But regardless, the out of bounds play to Zion James, and then the other thing, the final possessions in those 2 losses, maybe Javon Quinterly in the USF game, you can't really do much about it. You got 6 seconds, and Penny tried to call a timeout. But regardless, there wasn't a plan there. But the one against Tulane, what in God's name?
You didn't like that shot?
You have 12 seconds to go, and they just sort of pass it around the perimeter. You're down by 2, by the way. Pass it around the perimeter, and they just heave up a 3-point ball from David Jones.
You didn't like that shot?
Who has not been particularly great from the 3-point line since entering conference play. Listen, the shot is whatever. There was no plan. There was no play drawn up. There was no action. It was just sort of, all right, let's dribble it out here and take the last shot and try to go win the game. They didn't try to get to the rim when they were down by 2, didn't try to force overtime. It was just, let me heave this 3.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, what is that? How, of all the things that you could draw up and do on the final possession, that's what we ended on?
Yeah. I mean, there does at times, I'm not going to say it's, 100% of these games, but the last 2 games, like, it just has felt like a team that is a little bit off and a little bit out of sync. Like, they just don't look like the same team that just a week ago, beat Wichita State by 26 points. And we were saying, okay, here could be the breakthrough point. And it's been like that a lot. I'm not going to act like this is just a new problem. Like, it's just these last 2 games, they haven't been in sync. I mean, you go back to the UTSA game, like, there are multiple games where they just haven't been fully in sync. And I think that's another reason for concern, because you're at this point of the season, you're over halfway through the season, and you still, in some of these games, can't get on the same page. Even weirder than that to me is that when it is a big game, they look in sync and they look like they're playing together and They look like they're playing well. And then you get in these other games and it's like people just kind of want to take over. It's like they can really only play good basketball or their best basketball against quality opponents. When they play teams that aren't great or that they feel like they should roll over, they just don't look in sync on the floor. So
I have an analogy about this. I have an
go
analogy.
Right.
And Gabe will understand this, and Christian, you will soon enough. But when you're married and you Christian, when you're married, what is the definition of a good marriage? Is it the going from like moment to moment, like vacation to vacation, big moments, happy moments? Is it being really good in those moments? Or is it those mundane, everyday
Right.
working together as a team? Is like coexisting, cohabitating, like fulfilling each other's goals, those kinds of things? A sign of a good marriage is not being able to go from like one Cancun trip to a Dominican Republic trip to the Bahamas to this to that.
It's easy to be happy in those
It's
moments.
easy to be good then. It's easy to be happy when you're on the
Right.
beach all the time playing and frolicking in the sand. But when you're having to pay bills and when you're having to get up and go to work and when you're having to see each other when you're sick and when you're having to all these kinds of things, that's when and that's where we're at right now for this Tigers team. They are in the midst of that mundane doing life with each other type of thing. And we are seeing that, man, there's some struggle there.
Yeah.
Kenny Stubblefield, the philosophizer. I like that one. That's really good. That's a great
analogy.
That's a really good one. Because this team just has to learn, man. They have to learn how to really step up in these type of moments. And here's the other thing too. I think it's even more so than the players, right? I think, especially in that South Florida game in that second half, I saw the coaching staff. I saw Penny sort of take his foot off the gas emotionally. They didn't press and put as much pressure on ball in the second half. They didn't know what to do against the 1-3-1 zone, and Penny didn't take timeouts to really explain it to them. I just think everybody, coaching staff, support staff, players, like they have to pull in the right direction and get it right in those normal moments, in those moments against UAB on a freaking, Wednesday night. Like they just have to pull in the right direction. They have more than enough talent. And I see this too. I see people talking about Caleb Mills being out, and that's big. It's huge. I'm not doubting it at all. Their perimeter defense has not been the same since he left. But at the same time, it can't possibly be this bad consistently just because one guy's out.
Yeah.
That's a want-to, and I think that's a leadership thing more than anything. Yeah, Caleb Mills is gone. You could talk about the on-court stuff. To me, it's substantially more about off-court and what he did in rallying that second group and the sacrifices he made. That's more important than anything really he did on floor, and he did a lot on floor.
All right, let me ask you this, Christian, as we're about to move on. Give me one or two fixes. Both of y'all give me one or two fixes for this team. Like, what do you see coming out of this season's not over? They're 15-4. Everything is still in front of them that they can get. But what are some things based on these last two games, some of the comments that you're hearing? What is one or two fixes for this team moving forward?
Well, I think I talked about this last week on Gabe's show. Like they just have to just treat every game the same. To me, that's the biggest. I know that, we can go through underlying issues and on the court and all these types of things, but these guys are veterans. They know how to play. They know how to play in different systems. They know how to play against different defensive schemes. I think it's just a level of being bought in and a level of taking every game like it's the utmost important. Treat every game, treat that Wednesday night game against UAB like it is, a Saturday afternoon game against a top 20 opponent at home. And if they treat every game like that, they could win every game on the rest of their schedule. There's no doubt about that. Like they're talented enough to win out on this schedule. It's just, do they put that importance on every game? Do they bring their A game every game? Like, can they get that motivation? Can they find that inner motivation to say, okay, this is what we're playing for? Let's not look at today. Let's not look at we're playing one of the worst teams in the country today on the road in front of 800 people. Let's look at it as this prepares us for the moment. This gets us to the moment where we're getting to play in big time NCAA tournament games as a high seed and, potentially make a run at it. And if they can do that, they're fine. I think that fixes almost everything if they can do that.
I think that is definitely one thing I would point to. The second point is I think you could have all the intensity in the world, but if you're still playing hero ball on both ends the way this team does, you'll still have some struggles night to night. They had more turnovers than assists in the game against Tulane. They had 14 turnovers, 12 assists. I mean, David Jones, he's unbelievable. He's one of the best offensive players, best players in college basketball so far this year. But he's got to learn to share the ball. He had 32 points and 11 rebounds, no assists.
Yeah.
So, like, you just have to be better at sharing the ball on the offensive end. And I think on the defensive end, I know that hero ball is something that is attached to strictly offense. Oh, this guy just tries to go get off the bounce. He tries to get it for himself. But on defense, I see it too, man. When the ball comes off the rim, and you're trying to transition into your defense, sometimes you just have to let that rebounder go and you have to get back. That's what happened in that UTSA game. They just had a bunch of transition threes that they knocked down because no one was back. I think that they try to jump passing lanes a little too often to try to go get knockaways, which is not a bad thing, but you have to be more careful and more sound defensively. I just think that on both ends, playing a little bit more within yourself and in structure with a team would go a long damn way. And I don't think it would hurt for Penny to draw up a few things on the offensive end, but I'll leave that out for a second.
Yeah, I agree with that. All right, Kenny, let's transition. Let's talk about Jordan Brown. We talked about this a little bit last week and the potential of it. Rumors started swirling around, and here we are. And the news has been broken that he is coming back. I mean, who knows? I want to hear both of y'all's opinion on this because this is one of the stranger stories that have happened during Penny Hardaway's time at Memphis, which has been marred by some pretty crazy things going on. But this might be at the top of the list. Several months ago, or in the spring, Memphis gets Jordan Brown. It's a huge addition. Yada, yada, yada. Go into the season with high hopes. This is one of the best players in the country, one of the best bigs in the country. He looks pretty terrible from day one, looks out of shape. There are reports coming out that he is out of shape in the locker room or behind the scenes, that he's out of shape during practices and stuff like that. Doesn't play well, ultimately isn't with the team, is sick for quite a bit of time. And then the rumors start swirling that he's coming back, and now he is back. So very up and down roller coaster of a story. What do we think about Jordan Brown coming back?
Let me first say I am glad to hear that he's gotten over his sickness.
Mm-hmm.
That's first and foremost.
Whatever it was made him lose some daggum weight. I'll tell you that.
He looks a little more in shape, brother. I can't lie.
I mean, let me get that, bro. When I used to live in China, they used to say you're only one Chinese parasite away from your ideal body weight. I'm wondering if, like, the Dominican Republic, he got a parasite, and
did he get Ozempic?
Yeah,
he caught the old Ozempic.
Yep.
Good God. But no, man, as far as this return,
fresh chop, looking good.
Yeah, I don't know, as far as like where he fits in, he doesn't necessarily fit in at this particular moment. He's not going to get a lot of minutes. So he's got to check his ego at the door. If he's willing to do that, that's fine. Now,
if Malcolm and Naquan continue to foul the way they are, he will get minutes.
Here's my concern. This went from, reports of the team not being so open to the idea to in a week, hey, he's on the team. I want to know within that locker room, and we'll never fully get this information. I want to know who voted no and who voted yes and how many are on each side. Because from my experience, it just sort of feels like you had a lot of no votes, maybe a couple of yeses, but the coaches still made the decision for the team ultimately. They wanted the team's input, but
there's only one vote.
We want your good input. Gabe. We want you to agree with us. And
there's only one vote that matters, Gabe. You could have 150 no's.
Exactly.
There's only one vote that matters.
Exactly. That's my point. Like I just wonder how it plays behind the scenes with that sort of. That's the feeling of it for me. It feels like coaching staff, regardless of what the players really wanted, coaching staff was like, "Yeah, we're bringing him back.
He's coming.
We
back.
need him." Yeah.
No, I mean, I think that's probably true, but I also think that if these players just want to win. These guys just want to win, man. And if Jordan can help them do that, then by all means. But like you said, I mean, he's coming in to a very clear pecking order. I mean, Malcolm, it definitely felt like Malcolm was played with a little bit of a chip on his shoulder
8
against
blocks,
Tulane, didn't it?
God.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
the dude was everywhere. And so, maybe hearing some of the things that were, being talked about him on Twitter, after the USF game, plus Jordan coming back, maybe that kind of reinvigorated Malcolm. But, I don't care what holistic medicine camp that Jordan Brown went to while he was gone. If Malcolm continues to play that way like he did against Tulane, he's not going to see minutes over Malcolm Dandridge this year.
Right.
Malcolm is by far the best big on this team right now. And so
holistic. So did you get that ivermectin, by the way?
Listen,
Aaron Rodgers suggests that stuff.
The sage and the herbs and the
It works.
It works,
nice.
bro.
Yeah, but there's a pecking order in that front court. Back to what you were
100%.
saying.
But again, it's like you look at that Tulane game, Malcolm fouled out with like 7 minutes left, and Naquan had 4 fouls the entire game. And I honestly think Naquan starts off with 4 fouls. Like every game, it's like, hey, let's get him 4 fouls.
Right off
it's
the
like rip. Right off the rip. Like, hey, we know you're gonna have 4 fouls. He just fouls so much. Anyway, but I do think that Jordan is clearly, I think Penny's looking at it like in the long term, the grand scheme of things. I can bring a former Lou Henson winner off the bench in replacing Malcolm if Malcolm gets in foul trouble. Like, hell yeah, sign me up.
Right.
So, and I think the players are going to be fine, man. I think the players will be fine. I'm sure
there's a risk. You're running a risk. You're running a risk.
1,000%.
Don't get it twisted, because if this goes bad and Jordan Brown has an ego and pisses everybody off, that's where you have a lot of players start to say, okay, well, the coaches decided to do this and he's doing the same exact shit he did before.
Right.
Yeah.
Do we trust the coaches as much? You're running a risk.
If you listen to Penny, they're already feeling that way anyway. So why not bring the kid back? You know what I'm saying? Like, they're already feeling that way. There's already issues among the team before Jordan Brown. So bring Jordan back in and what is that old adage, man?
2 negatives equal a positive? Is that
right?
where
No,
we're going with this?
I'll tell you what the positive is. Winning cures all.
Yes.
Yeah.
So like no matter what happens, if they come out and they beat UAB, Memphis media is going to stop getting off their high horse and will, stop, throwing out some of those old shady comments from a few years ago when Penny freaked out on them. Memphis fans will calm down just a little bit. You'll stop hearing those nonsense remarks from Penny about issues within the locker room. The team is going to be like, yeah, man, Jordan's back. He's our guy. Yeah. All it takes is one win.
Yeah.
One win. And it'll be fine.
Okay, so before we get to the hot 3, I got something real quick. So Penny is doing his radio show right now at Brookhaven, and our good friend Parth tweeted out a couple quotes. I'm going to read these quotes real quick, and then we'll get to the hot 3.
I'm nervous now. I'm nervous. What is he saying?
When Christian is doing
yeah, he's surprising us with these things. All right, come on.
Way better. These are way better. That's what I kind of wanted to gloss this back.
End on a good note. Good note. Okay.
He said, we set out to do something special at the beginning of the season. We have to regroup. We're looking to play for something way bigger than the conference title. I like that way better. First off.
Thank you.
Better than the last 4 in or a last 4 in type team.
For sure. And then this one, I thought this one was interesting because Gabe basically nailed this on the head. Someone, he was talking about Caleb Mills and said, this is Parth tweeting it. This isn't an exact quote. This is kind of paraphrase. But says it isn't just the defensive impact Mills brought that is missing, but that Mills was the Tigers' emotional leader and someone who would speak up in team huddles. And then his actual Penny quote following that is, now we have no one speaking up in the huddle. So that just kind of continues to layer the discussion that we're talking about, and just continues to show that this team is missing something. But if they can get that, I think we all believe that they can get back to that point. Now, talking about emotional leaders, Gabe, I don't know about you, but I think I do know who our emotional leader is on this show.
Yep.
Right next to us, Kenny Stubblefield, the emotional leader of the On the Bluff podcast.
He brings the juice. He brings the juice.
He does.
It's definitely a sad.
And he sacrifices a lot too.
That's a sad state of affair for this podcast. If I'm the emotional leader of the
we never hear it on the Bluff podcast. We never have to worry about anybody stepping up in the huddle because we do have Kenny Stubblefield. So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back on the other side to see what our leader, our fearless leader, Kenny Stubblefield, has cooked up for us in the hot 3.
Outside of just Memphis conference realignment, there's been some rumblings all over the Twitterverse. TJ, you heard anything about a merger with the Big 12 ACC leftovers and the Pac-2?
We've heard it, but like it just seems weird to think about, right?
The Pac is trying to get and retain their AQ status.
I mean, they're gonna have to add some teams. I don't know what the number. I can't remember the number. If it's 6 or 8 on how many teams.
I don't know that they're having to add. I think what he's alluding to is a merger of the Big 12. Florida State breaks away, and whatever 3 or 4 teams go. Let's say this merger, they end up with 30 teams. You're looking at 3 10-team,
something like that,
mini divisions or whatever.
Sure,
whatever they're going to call it. I don't know.
I definitely think that there's going to be some changing.
Tune in to Tigers Untapped with TJ Willis and Trey Lasley every Wednesday at 3 p.m. on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
I know that me and you both have a special place for DeAnthony Melton in our hearts. And I got over DeAnthony a lot faster than you've seen to have done. But God has blessed us with someone, Keith, that I think will satisfy that empty place in your heart, man, by the name of Vince Williams. How much of that empty void of DeAnthony Melton has been replaced by that new thing, man, Vince Williams?
Yeah, Vince Williams Jr. has absolutely filled that empty hole in my heart. I don't love watching our team. Like, it's fine, but they're not awesome. Josh suspended. Well, he's the fun guy. Like, Jaron's good, Desmond's good. The rest of these guys, I don't like watching play basketball. So I was like, this sucks. And then him getting this opportunity, and it was like a game or like 2 games. And I'm like, that's what I like watching play. And I got to say, we're now like 2 months into it. I'm like pinching myself where I'm like, he's better than I dreamed.
Tune in to The Anthony Sane Show Wednesdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. weekly on the Bluff City Media YouTube channel.
What up, boys? We're back for the Hot 3. And I have, listen, I kind of previewed these for y'all a little bit, and I know Christian is really excited about one of these topics, and it's about to go nutsy in a second. So, and Gabe will too. But man, let's do this.
Go harder than me though. Christian.
Yeah, I think Christian's going to go harder than you on this one.
I can guarantee when you sent it, I'm like, Christian will go on a 5-minute tirade about how he loves a certain person. But we'll save it.
We'll save it. All right, man. The divisional rounds happened this weekend. Fun games, man. There's a lot of really good action going on. Top 4 in the going to the Super Bowl. I guess it's the Final 4 for the NFL. What are your guys' thoughts, man? From some of the games you saw this weekend?
I want to start with Saturday because I didn't like Saturday as much as Sunday. Sunday was great. Sunday was phenomenal, and I think Sunday really brings out the storylines of the entire playoffs so far. Like the Lions winning, and then the Chiefs versus Bills game, phenomenal. But the Ravens just absolutely, it's not the Texans' time. It's just not. And I'll say this because I know that you're not a Lamar Jackson guy. You're just not a Lamar Jackson guy. You don't like him for whatever reason. Anybody who ever says they don't want a quarterback like Lamar Jackson can get. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. He's unreal, bro. I mean, 111 carries, 100 yards, 2 TDs, threw for 2 TDs.
Yeah.
That was an easy win at home. I feel good about their chances against the Chiefs, although it is going to be Patrick Mahomes. But the Ravens just got through that easily. 49ers look vulnerable, at least a tad bit.
Wait. You just made a prediction without actually making a prediction.
We'll get to it in a second.
Okay. I'm holding your feet to the fire on that one.
But the 49ers look a little bit vulnerable. But the Packers were kind of sneaky good. Jordan Love, there should be some good things headed into next season. He should get another contract. But the 49ers just look kind of mid until the end of the game, and then they sort of put their foot on the gas, and Christian McCaffrey started doing some things. Now, Sunday was phenomenal, man. I guess I'll start with the Lions. First NFC Championship game appearance since 1991. And Dan Campbell, 3 years ago, this is a guy talking about biting kneecaps and biting hunks out of people when they get knocked down and they get back up and eventually will be the last man standing. And I, for one, when I saw that nonsense, I was like, this guy has no shot. He's going to be an awful head coach.
I wondered about that. I wondered how y'all felt about that.
I felt the opposite, honestly. Like, I love Dan Campbell.
The only thing that I thought is, okay, at best, he'll be a culture creator and maybe there'll be a wild card team at some point.
Right.
But I never foresaw them being in an NFC championship in 3 years.
Oh, I didn't think on that level.
And you realize on the back end, because it was like Jared Goff after the Rams stuff, you're like, what the hell is he anymore?
Did y'all see Dan Campbell give Jared Goff the ball after that Super Wild Card game? Yeah. I loved what he said to him. He said, "You're good enough for here," or something like that. And I was like, dog, that is such a dope line. You know, Jared Goff is like,
well, Jared Goff's still playing in Sean McVay's at home. And so are the Rams.
True.
Like, there was questions about him ever being like a high level playoff quarterback. He answered all those things. But I got to start there though, because the Lions are my favorite story of the NFL season. They are, and I saw it coming because of how well they played down the stretch of last season. But for them to take the expectations that were placed on them, run with them to an NFC championship, that's just nuts. That doesn't happen in Detroit. I think Dan Campbell's already a legend. He is already a legend in Detroit.
Gabe, I have a question for you. Do you remember when everybody was crapping on this Detroit Lions draft from this year, but there were two podcast hosts in Memphis, Tennessee that were fired up about
I think their
draft.
podcast is called On the Bluff.
It is. They got Jahmyr Gibbs. Been really freaking good this year.
Yeah.
They got Sam Laporta, arguably the best rookie tight end of all time.
Oh, and by the way, who saw that coming with Sam Laporta? That was my guy in the draft.
You were on that one. Brian Branch, been a very, very good nickel corner for them this year. Missing one. Who am I missing?
Jack Campbell.
Jack Campbell, been a really solid linebacker for them. Brad Holmes, we've given him a lot of credit. Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell, they've been a match made in heaven. They've done an incredible job. I love the Lions storyline. I'm with you. I think it's an incredible storyline. You go from a dumpster team to an NFC Championship game, first time in 30 plus years. It's pretty incredible, and the amount of culture that has to be brought in to do that is insane. Like, we probably can't even fathom how much culture change it takes to do that. With a quarterback who has been viewed as a system quarterback and was washed up, and he still carries some of those things. I mean, nobody's sitting here clamoring for Jared Goff to be in a conversation for a top 5 quarterback, but he's ran this offense perfectly. He's done an incredible job. They built it through the trenches. You look at what they do up front with that offensive line with Penei Sewell and Frank Ragnow and Taylor Decker.
Frank Ragnow's a tough son of a bitch, by the way.
Yes, he is.
Can we talk about that?
Yes, he is.
Holy hell. All-pro center hurts his knee and his ankle in the same exact game and just stays out there, and he's probably going to play in the NFC Championship.
Yeah.
It's nuts. He sprained both.
Right. So they're a really fun story. I'll jump back into Saturday really quick and just hit on it. Ravens, like you said, they were too much for the Texans. It's not the Texans' time yet. They weren't supposed to be here at this point. They deserve a ton of credit for just being in the playoffs in year one under DeMeco Ryans with a rookie quarterback. They weren't supposed to be here at all, and so they did an incredible job. DeMeco Ryans and that staff, arrows pointing straight up, even though they may lose offense coordinator Bobby Slowick. 49ers, Packers, Brock Purdy didn't look great. Deebo Samuel goes down. They're saying there's a 50-50 chance of him playing this weekend, so that has to bring some concern for the 49ers, especially against a team that is relatively similar to them offensively and a team that can run the ball, control the clock, that will out-physical you. This is very much a strength-on-strength game when you look at each team's offense. So we'll see how that plays out. I'm intrigued by that matchup, but it's one of those that you don't know because the 49ers can come out and be skull crushers one weekend and then come out the next weekend and not look wonderful. And the Lions seem to pretty much always bring it, at least bring that toughness and that edge to them. I know we're going to talk a lot more about this in the next segment, but Bills, Chiefs, another classic. This is, I know that CBS built this up as like it's Manning Brady 2.0, and I don't
really thought that, right?
No, I don't really like comparing it like that. It's it's two really good teams and two of the best quarterbacks in the league that consistently meet in the playoffs because of what I just mentioned. And it seemingly is always a very good game, and it was another classic game, back and forth, could have went either way, a couple of plays here and there. You get the fumble out of the back of the end zone, which I know you're going to hit on in a second. Here that felt like, okay, the Bills are going to win this game now, and then you get just a beautiful throw from Josh Allen to Stephon Diggs that goes right through his hands.
Two separate ones.
Yeah, two separate ones, but the deep shot is the one that everyone's going to talk about. That's a really tough one. Then you got Tyler Bass missing a field goal that could have tied the game. Like, this was another crazy back and forth.
As soon as CBS put up the 9 for 9 in the playoff graphic for Tyler Bass, I'm like, he's cooked. Yep. He's going to delete his Twitter tonight, and he deleted his Twitter.
So, Gabe, before we move on to segment number 2, I know you want to talk about two pretty controversial, or at least two storylines from this weekend. One being what I just mentioned, the fumble out of the back of the end zone, which happened in the Chiefs-Bills game, and then the Buccaneers going for the 2-point conversion on the front end instead of the back end. Also, I don't know if you saw this, but they could have called a timeout and gotten the ball back at the end of the game, but they didn't. They sat on the timeout. So run through that for us
real quick. Though, on the Josh Allen, I want to just touch on the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes thing being built up as Manning versus Brady. That's always been stupid. Yeah, it's one-sided. Josh Allen he's 0-3 against Patrick Mahomes, and also, like, when you look at the wins that he's got 5 playoff wins. His first one was Phillip Rivers with the Colts in 2020. Then it was Lamar Jackson getting a concussion in the third quarter when he won in 2020. Then it was Mac Jones in 2021. Then it was Skylar Thompson for the Dolphins in 2022, and then his only win this year was Mason Rudolph and the Steelers. Like, as much as I love Josh Allen, and I'm not blaming him for losing in the playoffs, and I think it's unfair to nail him to the cross for losing that game last night or 2 nights ago when this comes out. He is not, like, they have not accomplished near enough to be in that Manning Brady. It's just not. I mean, Manning had MVPs, Brady had Super Bowls at that same time. Yeah. And, like, you could go back and forth for a while until Tom Brady took off with all of his Super Bowls. So that's the last thing I'll say on that. Now, first, let's break down the McCole Hardman gets an end around on, like, the 3-yard line, fumbles it out of the back of the end zone, and everyone wants it to change, wants the rule to change. They say it's too punitive. Can I ask you first? Can I ask you this first? And maybe you'll disagree with me because I don't think the rule needs to change. What do you think about that? Why do we constantly get into these conversations where we decide to be reactionary because we don't like the outcome of certain plays? Like, why do we have to be so reactionary?
I don't know. This one's been a conversation for a lot of this season, and I don't really know. It is a weird rule. So I don't really know. I don't really have an opinion on it. Like, I'm fine either way. If they change it to, the ball goes back to the offense, if it goes out of the back of the end zone, cool. I can see an argument for that. And if they keep it as a touchback, I can see it as that. Like, I don't know. It's one of those things that's so 50-50 to me. Like, it's just an up in the air thing on how do you deem what's necessary.
Just as a guy who played football my entire life, we were always taught to play good football, not bad football. We were always taught that we're not going to be incentivized to play bad football. You don't reach the ball out. You don't fumble out of the back of the end zone. That's bad football. And consistently, we find this on defensive, like guys on defense that hit guys too hard or whatever. Like, defense. Tom Brady talked about Gardner Minshew and some quarterbacks throwing their wide receivers into concussion balls, how that's a bad habit. We keep doing this thing where we're incentivizing bad habits, and it's starting to piss me off, to be quite frank with you. Like, in the end of the day, what McCole Hardman did there was bad football. What Andy Reid drew up was bad football. Why are you handing it off to a guy who already fumbled in the game when your running back ran for he had 15 rushes, 97 yards, and a TD, and the Bills had no chance of stopping him? Isaiah Pacheco, I'm speaking of. Why do we have to incentivize and keep the punishment from being lesser because they played bad football? I just get annoyed with it, man. And I think everybody gets so bent out of shape and they get so reactionary about these things. We've had this rule since the beginning of time. And we want to change it because your beloved Chiefs fumbled it out of the back of the end zone and the Bills had another chance to go win the game. And then also, you're not going to sell to me that it makes the game bad. Without that play a couple nights ago, that game is not as close. That game is over right then when Isaiah Pacheco eventually punches it into the end zone on the next play. So, I just don't get why we have to change things because people get their feelings hurt. It's stupid to me. It's consistently stupid. I think if you make dumb decisions as a football coach, if you make a bad play as a football player, you should be punished. Now, if they do change it, people are talking about 5-yard penalty. No, it should be close to as punitive. You should put somebody back on the 20 like a normal touchback if they're going to keep the ball in the offense, and it should be loss of down. You should not be giving people free passes for making stupid football plays. I'm getting sick of it, man. Now, all right, next, we did have the going for 2 down by 8 thing with Todd Bowles at the end of the game. I was kind of surprised Todd Bowles did it because he's an old football guy. I don't know why you chase points when you don't need to chase points in that moment. The thought process apparently is if you get the 2, you can go for the win with an extra point on the next time if you score again. Okay, but then if you miss it, you're going to have to go for 2 the next time just to tie the ball game, and there's going to be a 55% chance to go put it in the end zone. They say it's 55% to go for 2, and it's 95% to kick an extra point. I guess the math, if I have this right by the analytics crowd, I heard Chris Collinsworth going through the whole thing. If I have this right, you take the 55% chance to go for 2 when you're down 8, as opposed to the 95% chance to go for the extra point because you could potentially win the game next time around. That's the idea of the whole thing. Have you heard this whole thing, Christian?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
I guess that's sort of the idea. So 55% is better than 95% so long as you have a chance to go win the game.
I guess so.
What? Seriously, and I'm going to cuss here. What the fuck are we talking about? Just kick the damn. What's so wrong with overtime? For real. We changed the rules. Everybody's going to possess the ball unless you give up an opening touchdown. But at the same time, what do people have an issue with overtime? Why is this so? We have so much freaking analytical information that we have become common sense stupid.
Yep.
Just kick the extra point. Take the 95% chance to go tie the damn game. And here's the other thing, and this is a novel concept. You can kick the extra point there. You don't need to chase the points. Guess what? That 55% chance to go win the game with a 2-point conversion, that'll be there if you score another touchdown.
True.
You'll be down by 1. You can go. Isn't that a novel concept?
It's crazy.
Go win the game in a do-or-die situation. Don't put yourself in a do-or-die situation by missing the first 2-point conversion. People are, and everyone seems to just accept it as fact. The analytics say it, you have to do it. No, you don't. Because I also know the analytics don't take into account the mental fortitude of guys on the field. Baker Mayfield, as soon as they missed that 2 and he got the ball back, what'd he do? Do you remember? Threw a ball into traffic with a minute and a half to go for a pick. He probably knew I have to go 90 yards down the field, then get a 2-point conversion. I have to press. I have to get this ball pushed down the field. If he doesn't have all these things going on in his mind, maybe he doesn't make a stupid decision like that or try to force something and press. So analytics, I get what the numbers say, but not everything is played out on a spreadsheet. Not everything is meant to just be a mathematical equation. There are 11 guys with different brains that react different in pressure situations on the field. Stop acting like mathematics can solve that. And so in certain situations, it may work. I get that. And it worked apparently a few times this year. But everybody just accepting it as fact frustrates me, guys. It does.
Gabe Kuhn, football guy.
Now
I agree with you. Let's move on.
So I just went on a nice 5 or 6 minute rant, and
I like it.
We just move on. Great.
No, it's good.
All right, cool.
Real quick, before we get into the next one, we're going to talk stats in this next topic. But I got a stat to tell y'all from tonight's. There's an NBA game going on right now. This is Monday night. We're filming. Minnesota's playing. Karl Anthony Towns, Christian's favorite NBA big man.
What?
Huh? That's
what?
Not true? That's not true?
No.
Oh, I thought you liked Karl Anthony Towns. No. My bad. He's played 19 minutes in this first half. Guess how many points he has? He's got 41. 41 points in 19 minutes.
I actually see the updated one. It's 44 in 21 minutes. It's half.
Joel Embiid has 60 right now.
He is 14.
What's going on?
What's going on with these big men? He's 14 of 16, at least at this point. He's 14 of 16 from the field, and he was 8 from 8. He's 8 from 8 from the three-point line. Not a bad night.
Joel Embiid does have 59.
I know.
This is nuts.
Okay, big men are
Karl Anthony Towns. Hey, do you think he does his low voice after the game?
Yeah,
he gets his post-game press.
Sure.
Job's not finished. I'm not worried about this.
Job's not finished, man.
It was just a good night. It was a good night for me.
Yeah. Hey guys,
he is seriously the corniest person in the NBA. But I don't want to go in on him. This was not what this.
Speaking of somebody who's not corny, Patrick Mahomes is 28 years old, boys, and he has now led the Kansas City Chiefs to another divisional playoff.
AFC Championship.
That's what I mean. AFC Championship game. Tell me, y'all sent some stats and some numbers our way. I want you to kind of take the lead on this one and just tell me some of the stats that just are eye-popping to you about Patrick Mahomes.
Well, I might as well just put my mic on mute real quick.
Yeah, just go on mute. We're both.
I'm not
going to
go for as long as Gabe just did. I promise you that. I can't form that many words. But yes, most people that listen to the show or know me know that I am a massive Patrick Mahomes fan. I think he is the best football player that's ever lived on the face of the planet. I get it. We can get into the boat conversation, but he is the best player that I've ever seen play football in my entire life. Don't care what this year looked like. I've seen him for long enough. I know that he's the best player I've ever seen. 6 years as a starter, 6 straight AFC Championship games. He has only played one road playoff game, which was on Sunday against the Bills, in which he won. And he played nearly flawlessly. You look at some of the throws he made. I know it wasn't the eye-popping stats that we're used to seeing from him in the playoffs, but some of the throws that he made were absolutely ridiculous. In particular, there was one to Marquez Valdes-Scantling where he steps up in the pocket, flicks the wrist, boom, there it is. Just made good throws on it. He made one that wasn't caught to Justin Watson on a corner route. I don't know if y'all caught that one, kind of fading away. Justin Watson one-on-one coverage hit Justin Watson right in the chest, and he dropped it.
Yep.
But to me, one of the craziest things, there's so many that we can go through here. Patrick Mahomes has now played 16 playoff games in his 6-year career. He has 4,500 passing yards, almost 500 rushing yards, 43 total touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, and he is 13-3 in playoff games. 2 of his losses have come against Tom Brady, the other one against Joe Burrow. He is in the AFC Championship game every single year that he's been a starter. And this year, to me, is by far the most impressive. Statistically, no, it wasn't. This was his worst year statistically, but this was the worst team that he's played on. Specifically offensively, there's very little receiving weapons around him. Travis Kelce, probably the best tight end of all time, in my opinion. Hasn't been as good this year, still been one of the better tight ends in the league, but not what we're used to seeing. Outside of him and the last 4 to 6 games from Rashee Rice, there was nothing to throw the ball to. MVS, not good. Justin Watson, not good. They went back and got McCole Hardman after the Jets released him, not good. Kadarius Toney, horrible. I mean, he had nothing. He is literally playing by himself. One of the, I think they easily had the most drops in the league this year. I don't even think it was close. But still, inevitably, here again, the Chiefs are in the AFC Championship game because they have Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback, and he is the best player to ever play. Gabe, you've got some stats too.
All right. Now, of qualifying starters that have played 10 playoff games in their career, Patrick Mahomes is first in win percentage, 813. He's first in yards per game, 312.8. He's first in TD to INT, 38-7. He's first in passer rating with 106.7. He's first in completion percentage, 66.8. He just eclipsed the pre-30 playoff wins record. He's at 13. No one else has had that many, including Tom Brady. But now, at 28 years old, these are the people he's tied with when it comes to playoff wins. Ben Roethlisberger, 2 Super Bowls. Brett Favre, 1 Super Bowl. Roger Staubach, I'd have to go back to see how many Super Bowls he's won. If he wins the AFC Championship this year, he will have tied Terry Bradshaw, John Elway, Steve Young, and Peyton Manning for playoff wins. And if he does win the Super Bowl this year and gets to 15 wins, he will only be trailing Joe Montana by 1 playoff win. Again, he's 28 freaking years old. The only people he'd be trailing if he does win the AFC Championship game, though, are Joe Montana and Tom Brady. It's nuts. And then also the question becomes, okay, when the going gets tough, like when does when he's down in playoff games, when he has issues, what does he look like? So far in his career, when he's down by 7+ points at any point in a playoff game, he's 8-2. The rest of the NFL combined through that time, when they have been down by 7+ points in a playoff game, the rest of the NFL is 13-60.
Yeah.
Like, it just defies any logic what he's been able to do. I think he's the best quarterback we have ever seen. Not the most accomplished yet, but I think he's well on his way. And even when you think that it's going to go bad, he just played his first road game ever in the playoffs, it still ends up in his favor. So we are watching absolute greatness, and I don't know of any other way to put it. Those stats are just mind-numbingly good.
All right, let's move on to segment number 3. I mean, our topic number 3. I think y'all both did it perfectly with Patrick Mahomes. He's phenomenal. It's awesome watching guys like him play. UFC 297 happened this weekend. Be honest with you, boys, wasn't that thrilled with it. Kind of a boring card. There's only one thing I really want to talk to you guys about, and that's the middleweight division in the men's UFC middleweight division. Obviously, the championship was on the line between Sean Strickland, who is the champion, versus Dricus du Plessis. Sean Strickland is defending his title for the first time since he took it from Israel Adesanya. I mean, beat him up, deserved to win that fight. So, of course, the championship is his. Dricus beat him in 5 rounds. Decision win. Close fight. Split decision. What are your guys' thoughts? Does the Sean Strickland Dricus du Plessis thing move the needle at all?
Not at all. Not even close. No. It was gross. It was great. It's like who like buying that, you just feel kind of shorted. You really do. Because it's an interim and then somebody could step up. I feel like Robert Whittaker could have saved us from all this by beating Dricus du Plessis, but he got knocked out in the second round. But no one likes either of those guys. They don't fight particularly fun.
No.
There was no knockout. And that fight, it's like, okay, Sean Strickland won technically on the feet, and he struck him more. But in the end of the day, Dricus had, 6 takedowns?
Yeah.
And some of them were stuffed. It was just kind of boring. And like it just feels like it's just a placeholder. And I don't think anybody is excited about that.
Let me tell you how much of a needle mover Dricus du Plessis is not. He made Sean Strickland the babyface in this fight. And Sean Strickland is a jackass. Like, he's horrible. Am I wrong on that?
He's terrible.
Like, nobody.
There's literally there are like 5-minute compilations of him saying like racist remarks and like sexist,
he's
transphobic remarks. He even said it in like the freaking before the fight. He's making transphobic remarks. It's like, dude, why do you can you just act normal for a half second?
And Dricus du Plessis made the fans in Canada say, you know what, we like
Yeah, we like this guy. Exactly.
Yeah, we'll get behind
my
you
gosh,
because
man.
you are a nothing burger. Like Drake
Yeah.
Duplessis, I'm sure, great fighter. Congratulations to him. Don't want to rain on his parade. You know, he's been fighting for a long time. He's 21-2, but damn, like ain't nobody.
But it kind of comes down to like, who gives a shit?
Nobody. Everybody's
No
waiting
one
for
does.
Israel to come back. That's all they're
Exactly.
waiting for.
This
is the Matt.
100%.
I said this before we got started. This is the Matt Serra versus George St. Pierre type situation where George St. Pierre was beating everybody's brakes off before, got into a fight with Matt Serra. Matt Serra got a lucky punch, knocked him out. And everybody's just like, hey, man, congratulations, Matt Serra. You're going to make a long career out of that one fight, right? Like he didn't do anything else for the rest of his career, but he's still the champion. So congratulations. And Sean Strickland can say that too. You are still the champion, but we're all just waiting for the rightful champion to come back, man. That's all we're waiting on. This just feels, the middleweight division has always been my favorite division in the UFC. And so I'm like kind of annoyed that Sean Strickland and Drake Duplessis have been the last two champions for this division because there's so many other better people. You know, Robert Whitaker, Israel Adesanya are two of my favorite fighters ever. And so anyway.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. It's just a placeholder. No one cares until Israel Adesanya comes back. That's when the middleweight division will have juice again, because right now it absolutely does not. But fellas, we are going to wrap this up. As we mentioned at the top of the episode, we will be back in studio next week. So we appreciate you guys for joining us this week. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like, subscribe, and comment there. You can do the same wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else you can listen to podcasts. We appreciate you guys for joining us, and we will see you back here next week.
Thank you for listening to On the Bluff. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a rating and a review wherever you download your podcasts. Also, like and subscribe to Bluff City Media's YouTube page. Head over to www.bluffcitymedia.co for comprehensive coverage of Memphis sports and how you can become an insider.